Okarun and Momo arrive at the tunnel to confront Turbo Granny. Just when they think they've won, a giant crab spirit crashes through the wall. Welcome to episode 4 of Dandadan, Kicking Turbo Granny's Ass. I love that name for the title. This episode is freaking peak. This is the best episode so far. It is freaking amazing. Rather than spending the next few minutes gushing over it, let's just jump right into the breakdown. We start off right away with Momo and Okarun outside of the tunnel, and basically they're arguing with each other about who's going to go first, because neither one of them wants to go in the tunnel first because they're both scared. We just kind of have like a funny moment where Momo's like, well, go ahead, Okarun. And Okarun's like, ladies first. And then Momo basically says, well, can't you see how much I'm crying? I'm scared. And of course, her face is completely dry, and Okarun calls her out on that. So they decide to walk in the tunnel together. But as they're walking in together, they keep trying to like slow down so the other one goes ahead, and then they start like attacking each other. It's just comically done. It's hilarious. But they go into the tunnel, and Momo starts taunting Granny and basically just kind of mocking her. And that's when she sees a giant granny head covering the entire tunnel. And so they're about to leave out the other way when they notice another granny head blocking them in. So they're trapped inside this tunnel, surrounded on both sides by giant granny heads. The granny basically taunts them and then goes to eat them. And just as it's about to eat them, Momo realizes, or she has a flashback to when her grandma told her that all you gotta do is you gotta taunt Granny. Like, Granny is super confident in herself. You just gotta mock her, taunt her, and she'll cave quickly. So Momo starts taunting her. Basically says, you're supposed to be the Turbo Granny. Are you scared of a race against us? You're nothing but a loser, aren't you? Stuff like that. So Momo puts out the challenge. Hey, why don't you put your speed up against us? And Granny's like, all right, how far are we racing? And Momo basically says, we're not racing. We're going to play a game of tag. You give us a 10-minute head start, and then you try to capture us. And if you can capture us, then you win. And so the challenge is on. Momo and Okarun start running. And it's kind of funny because as they're running away, Okarun's like, Momo, you're a genius. And Momo's just like, yeah, I know. It's that thing that I mentioned earlier where anytime anyone praises Momo, she just immediately accepts it and acknowledges it. If someone says, Momo, you're badass, she's just like, yeah, I know. And it's just something that I love about Momo. So they start running, but as they're running, they realize that Granny's counting all wrong. Like, as soon as she gets to like 5, she goes, 5 seconds, 6 minutes, 7 minutes, and eventually she counts to 10 minutes. But it's not like actual 10 minutes, it's basically like 10 seconds. But Granny says 10 minutes instead. And so she sends out a bunch of arms that capture Momo and wrap her up and cocoon her. Now it's just Okarun. And Okarun's trying to free Momo. And Granny starts saying, like, her 10 minutes are up. Now it's your 10 minutes. And she starts counting. And Okarun basically says, you're cheating. Like, you're not counting right. And Granny just taunts back with, she never told me how I needed to count. Okarun runs out of his 10 minutes. And he's about to get eaten when he has a flashback to when Momo says, you're silly, Okarun. The next time we're in trouble, I'm going to save you again. And so he realizes, I can't keep relying on Momo all the time. Like, I need to be able to step up and save us at some point. So his plan is to dive at Turbo Granny while yelling out, let me suckle your teats. And then he bites down on her breasts. So yeah, Okarun has a mouthful of Granny Turbo's boobies. And she's screaming as he's like biting into her breasts. And Granny can't do anything. Like, she's getting weakened. She can't like grab him or anything because he's wearing the shrine outfit. It's protected. So instead, her plan is, well, if I can't grab him, then I'm going to possess him again. So she jumps inside his body and possesses him. And then as soon as she goes to finish off Momo, now that she's in possession of Okarun, she starts feeling something squeezing her. And it's Momo from inside the cocoon, basically saying that even though I can't see you, I can sense you. I can sense that you possessed his body. And so Momo is actually squeezing Granny from inside the cocoon. So Granny rushes at Momo, goes to attack her, but Momo's able to snuff out just enough so that when Turbo Granny breaks the cocoon, rather than getting attacked, it turns back into Okarun, and 2 of them are free. But now Granny is inside Okarun once again. We even see her like poking out of his neck and stuff. And we have just a hilarious moment where Momo starts taunting Turbo Granny and basically saying, like, how should we torture you now? And that's when Turbo Granny calls for the spirit location, the spirit that's bound to this tunnel. So in the previous episode, Seiko mentioned that it wasn't just Turbo Granny in the tunnel alone, but rather Turbo Granny and a spirit that was like bound to the location. So the spirit that was bound to the location shows up. And as you probably heard from the beginning of this video, it's a giant crab. So a giant enemy crab breaks through the wall and starts confronting Okarun and Momo. And we have a hilarious moment. It's an iconic scene where we have Momo and Okarun running with the giant enemy crab chasing behind them. And Momo's basically like, hey, we can't outrun this thing. Okarun, I'm going to need you to transform. And so Okarun transform. Granny obviously gets pissed off because she's like, how dare you use my powers like this? And basically, Okarun gives Momo a piggyback ride as they're running. And Okarun is just like running full speed. And because he's using Turbo Granny's powers, he's able to outrun this crab. Unfortunately for him, though, is that I thought this was kind of funny. He basically says, Momo, you're too heavy. I'm not going to be able to make this turn. And so instead, they just go full speed off the side of the road, and they just start plummeting towards the city below. Okarun is able to break their fall, and they think they're like in the clear for a moment. But then not even a couple seconds later, the giant crab falls behind them and starts chasing them once again. So we have Okarun pick up Momo once again and just start rushing through the city. And here's the thing. They are not in the empty space. They are just in the regular, normal dimension. So everyone can see this. However, these are regular humans. They're not like inclined to the spirit realm or anything like that. Like they're not inclined towards spirits. So they don't see spirits. They don't see a giant crab. They don't see Okarun being possessed. All they see is they see a normal high school boy carrying Momo, a high school girl, on his back and running down the street. And so they think that this is like a cute couple and they start snapping photos and stuff like that. I just thought it was kind of funny. Momo's obviously embarrassed and she's like hoping that no one that she knows sees her because there's no way she can explain this. It just looks like the school's nerd is giving her a piggyback ride when in actuality they're being chased by a giant spirit crab. Momo eventually leads them into the hot springs and basically they smash into the hot springs bathing area. And Okarun's like, what are you doing? This is water. Crabs thrive in water. And Momo explains that water is water, but this is a hot spring. And when you boil crabs, the meat tightens up and gets plump. And tying that up will mean that their movements get slowed down. And so we have a moment where the crab tries to pincher Okarun, but it's so boiled that it can't. Like it just kind of freezes. They're like, yeah, we did it. Momo immediately wants to start eating this thing. And Okarun's like, what the hell is wrong with you? There's like human heads growing out of this crab. Why do you want to eat it? But they leave the hot springs. They think they're in the clear. And that's when you see a bunch of people charging at them. And they're like, what the hell's going on? And then when they look carefully, they notice that their faces are all weird. And these people are just running full speed at them, running over cars and stuff. And Granny basically mentions that there's a giant cemetery at the edge of this city. And basically, I just called in some friends to have them borrow some bodies. So basically, Turbo Granny was able to communicate with the spirits in the cemetery that, hey, there's these two punks. I need you to help me stop. And so the spirits possess the inhabitants in the area. And so now the spirits are trying to go after Momo and Okarun. And as they're running away, Momo, she falls to the floor and Okarun goes to help her up. And then in front of them, the giant enemy crab appears. So now they're surrounded on one side by a giant crab, on the other side by an army of people. And Momo's like, Okarun, you need to go full throttle. And Okarun's like, are you sure? I already went full throttle once. I can only do it one more time. So once I go full throttle again, I'm basically out. Like, I'm not going to be able to transform again. Not only that, but the damage that going full throttle does to my body, like, I won't even be able to help you out in my normal form. But Momo's like, I need you to do it. Like, if you don't use it now, we're going to die. Trust me. And Okarun's like, all right. So Okarun transforms into Turbo Granny once more, picks her up on her back, and then goes full throttle. And this moment was freaking amazing. This is like my favorite moment in the series so far. Sai and Saru picked the perfect music to go along with this scene. So they're using a like edited version of William Tell's Overture, and it's perfect because it starts off first kind of like a horse race with the horse race theme, and we just have Okarun like sprinting through all of the people as he's carrying Momo. And then Momo is like using her abilities because Okarun, when he's going full throttle, he can't cut corners. So instead, Momo's using her psychic hands to grab onto poles and basically slingshot them around corners as they're being chased by the giant enemy crab. And we just have William Tell's Overture playing throughout this entire moment. And the animation, along with the music, it's freaking beautiful. I'll see if I can put like 5 to 10 seconds of it in here, just so you can kind of get a little piece of it. But if you don't see it, then it's probably because the first version got a copy strike or whatever, or at least a warning, and I had to take it down. But it's under 10 seconds, so hopefully you'll be able to see this. But here's a little moment. All right, so that's the moment. And that's just like a small little piece of this entire scene. This scene is it's freaking well done. It's so awesome. But eventually, as they're sailing through the air, Okarun depowers, and he's done. Like, he's pretty much out of commission. They start plummeting towards the ground. Momo tries to use her hands kind of like as wings to kind of glide them towards where they need to get to. Okarun is basically able to force one more transformation out of himself. Like, he's not able to go full throttle, but he's able to force one more transformation to just basically cushion the landing. So they just crash to the ground. They crash pretty hard, but they're not as damaged as they would have been if they just plummeted without any powers. But Okarun's basically out of commission at this point. He can't move. And Momo is pretty injured too. Granny shows up and basically says, "I can't forgive you for this. You keep cheating. What I detest the most is your lack of respect for elders." And Momo basically just says, "I've never seen an old person who can bully young folks this much. Mad respect for that." So Granny is about to eat them. Granny basically goes into the giant crab and transforms the crab into a giant enemy granny crab and says, "I'm going to eat you, so run away. You can leave the city real soon now. I'll wait for you to finish running. 10 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. It doesn't matter like how many minutes I give you. I'm going to be able to capture you anyways." And Mom was like, "I'll take 1 second." And she explains, "My ability is to take anything and grab it." And just as she says that, a train passes by. So Momo uses her psychic powers to grab onto the train, pull her and Okarun up, and basically they believe that they're safe because the train is faster than Granny at top speed. And so Momo just starts taunting it, but eventually the train starts slowing down and Granny is able to jump on top of the train. Basically taunts them like, trains aren't always going at full speed. They have to slow down at curves and stuff. I can always run at full speed while the trains can't. So I got you. That's the end for you. And Momo's like, just like my grandma said, you always take the bait. You're already on board the rails of your defeat. And up ahead, we see Seiko. And Seiko has basically put a bunch of talismans around and like nailed down barriers and stuff. She's basically set up a war to defeat Turbo Granny. Turbo Granny just needs to pass through it. And now that Turbo Granny's on the train, Momo is able to use her psychic powers to grab onto Turbo Granny and keep her on the train. And so this was a ploy all along. I'm like, damn, man, Momo's just freaking smart, like, to come up with this stuff. She basically has a hold of Turbo Granny, keeps her down. They pass through the barrier, and we just see the giant crab and stuff light up on fire. And we see all these like female, well, it looks like high school girls, like their spirits just going away, like basically like dissolving. And Momo basically realizes that these are like a bunch of trapped souls that were all like stuck together within the location-bound spirit. But eventually they get off the train and they kind of collapse on the ground. They basically realize, hey, like, we did it. But it's not really a victory because of what Momo like saw at the end. And that's when we cut to the morning of the next day, where we see Seiko, Momo, and Okarun outside of the cursed tunnel, and they're praying. And what Seiko explains is that this tunnel, basically what happened is a lot of young girls were captured violated, cut to pieces, and then tossed away. And because of their deaths and the way they died, some of them couldn't move on, and they ended up getting trapped in this tunnel. They didn't want to become evil spirits. Like, they didn't become evil spirits because they wanted to. It was just because they couldn't move on. And a lot of spirits, mediums have tried to hunt down Turbo Granny. And one thing that they noticed is that Granny always showed up in places where spirits of girls met irrational deaths. And they believed that perhaps she was counseling the spirits because the spirits couldn't let go of their anger. The spirits couldn't move on. And so Granny was there to comfort them. And this kind of goes back to why we needed that scene in episode 1 with the aliens and Momo and the banana. The reason for that is because the aliens were threatening to violate Momo in that way. Turbo Granny was able to sense it, and that's why she came through the phone. So she did technically kind of came through the phone to help Momo. I mean, at the same time, she was going to like curse them as well, but she has a softer side when it comes to young girls. Yeah, I just thought this was like a nice touch where it's not just an old granny that's, you know, just messing with people to mess with people. It's basically an old granny that tries to comfort girls who have died in terrible ways and who are like unable to move on. And she tries to basically help them until hopefully they can. So Momo basically starts kind of crying when she hears this. And then we cut to them celebrating Okarun getting his wiener back by eating crabs. So this is a theme that happens a lot in Dandadan. Every time when like an arc ends and they defeat like a big threat, we have them celebrating by having like a meal together, which I think is really cool, especially how we see like the meals, how we see like the celebration changing up as more and more people get involved in this group. But yeah, they're eating crab. Momo and Seiko are arguing over the crab legs. Basically, they're trying to fight over who gets more, and they notice that Okarun is kind of depressed. And he basically says, how can you eat crab right after experience what we just did? And that's when we have this funny moment where Seiko basically says, hey, you got your wiener back, right? Show it to me. And Okarun's like, what? No, I'm not going to show it to you. And Seiko's like, come on, show it to me. I want to make sure that you have it. And she basically starts chasing after Okarun. And I freaking love this little moment. As she's chasing after Okarun asks Momo for help. Like, hey, get your granny off of me. Momo's just like gnawing at this crab leg. And just like her face and the way she's like, the sound she's making, it had me in stitches. But yeah, we immediately cut to Okarun and Momo outside, and Okarun's gonna leave. And Momo basically explains like, hey, don't let what happened inside get to you. Like, the only reason my granny said that is because she noticed that you were depressed, and so she was trying to take your mind off of things. So that's the only reason why she was like trying to look at your wiener. But two of them say goodbye to each other and start walking away. And as they're walking away, both of them start thinking like, goodbye. Really, that's the last thing I'm gonna say. Is this really goodbye? Like, are we not gonna see each other anymore? Like, what happens to us from here on out? Are they still gonna be friends? Like, that's kind of what is kind of going through both of their heads. But just as Okarun is about to step past the premises, Momo stops him and says, I'll see you tomorrow. And basically, Okarun realizes that Momo wasn't lying to him when she said that she wants to stay friends with him. That this wasn't going to be a thing where once they stopped the curse, they were going to go to separate ways and never see each other again. And so Momo's happy that he's finally made a friend. And that's how the episode ends. And it was fantastic. I loved it. I loved the characterizations. I loved the animation. It's freaking awesome. The music choices were fantastic. Using William Tell's overture for the chase sequence was just a thing of beauty. Whoever came up with that decision deserves a raise. That was fantastic. And just the characters. I love just the characterizations between everybody. I love how like even Turbo Granny has like a little bit of backstory to her. Like, it's not just, oh, you know, she's an evil spirit trying to kill people or anything like that. It's like, no, she basically tries to do her best to help the spirits of women who have been murdered in terrible ways. She tries her best to like protect them and help them move on. And unfortunately, the way she does that, like, it can't stop them from turning evil because, you know, that sometimes the anger is too much. But she does her best. I will just say that this isn't the end of Turbo Granny. Turbo Granny is going to come back again, and Turbo Granny is a fantastic character who I absolutely love. So there's that. I guess a little bit of spoilers for anyone who doesn't read the manga. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes. I'm not going to show, there's like past the credits, there's a, on the next episode, I'm not going to show anything from there. But I will say that we're going to see a new character show up. And I'm kind of interested to see how people take this new character. I'm kind of interested to see how people, like, if they hate the character, if they like the character. I'll just say this without spoiling too much. I'll just say that every character that you see in Dandadan is awesome. Like, the way that they're written is amazing. Even characters that you might hate or find annoying at first, I will straight up tell you that yes, they 100% get redeemed. They 100% grow as a character, and you will learn to love them. You will absolutely fall in love with these characters. If you're just an anime-only watcher, if there's any characters that you're like, I don't really care for these characters too much, I find them kind of annoying or whatever, just keep at it. They will grow on you, trust me. They do get better. So yeah, I don't know what else to say. This was fantastic. The acting was great. Obviously, I've been listening to this with the Japanese dub for my reviews. And then when I get the free chance, I go back and watch episodes with the English dub. I'm not completely caught up when it comes to the English dub, but from what I've seen so far, the English dub is actually really good as well. All the voices fit, the dialogue is great. So I got no complaints with the English dub at this point in time. But again, I'm not completely caught up. But the Japanese dub is awesome as well. Like, especially Momo and just like her vocal tones, like the way it changes depending on like her mood and stuff, is like that actress freaking nailed this role. And Okarun as well, and just like the way he switches when he's Turbo Granny, and he's like, he sounds more cooler as Turbo Granny but more depressed. So acting is great, visuals are freaking fantastic. Like I said, this is one where I'm so glad to eat crow, because when it was first announced that Science Saru was going to be doing the animation, I had no like idea what to think of it, because I didn't have too much knowledge on Science Saru. Like, I know they did, I believe, Devilman Crybaby, which I thought was good, but I was like, I don't really know how they're gonna handle this. And when I saw the first screenshots and the first little bit of like trailers and stuff, I think it was like the PV or whatever they call it, I was like, oh, I don't know. Like, it seems a little bit too simplified. One of the best things about Dandadan is the gorgeous artwork. I don't know if they can fully capture that in an anime. So I was a little bit wary. Now, after actually watching the episodes, Science Saru they freaking nailed this. I can't imagine like any other studio doing as great of a job. Like, they really put their heart and soul into this series, and it shows. Yeah, this was an amazing episode. My favorite so far. And there you go. Looking forward to the next one. So there's Dandadan, episode 4, Kicking Turbo Granny's Ass. I loved it. I hope you enjoyed as well, or at least enjoyed this video. And I hope to see you next time. Take care. Later. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't, I still want to thank you for watching it this far, and I hope the next one is more to your liking. With that said, thank you once again, and I hope you guys and gals have a good one. Later.